chosen one. Understand that the balance of power has shifted entirely because they're so scared you will figure this out, leaving them humiliated and going to prison for the crimes they've worked so hard to conceal. The most powerful person in the room is always the one the others are afraid of, and right now your ability to see through their facade is the very thing driving them toward a complete and public unraveling. Hold on to this realization as the season of their secrecy ends and the era of their accountability begins. Let us go back, not far, just far enough. There was a period when things were loud, when the energy around a certain person or a certain chapter of your life was in constant friction. There were fights, clashes, accusations, and exhausting cycles of conflict that never fully resolved, no matter how many times the surface tension appeared to ease. And in the middle of all that noise, something was being buried, something was being carefully covered. The louder the chaos became, the less you were looking at what was actually happening underneath it. That was not accidental. Chaos is one of the oldest instruments in the manipulation playbook. It keeps the target overwhelmed and reactive. It keeps you so consumed by the fire directly in front of you that you never notice the one being quietly set behind you. While you were managing the visible drama, the arguments, the emotional volatility, the exhausting cycle of crisis that never seemed to end, someone was building something in the background. They were moving pieces, creating obligations, and setting up arrangements that carried your name without your knowledge or your consent. You felt the wrongness of it, not the specifics, not yet, but you felt that persistent, low-grade unease. You sensed that no matter how many times things seemed to settle, they never actually settled. Explanations were always slightly too polished. Certain subjects were avoided with a precision that felt deliberate rather than coincidental. You held on to that feeling. You did not dismiss it. And that refusal, that quiet, faithful act of trusting your own perception, is going to matter more than you currently realize. At some point, the loudness stopped, or it appeared to stop. The person at the center of that friction went quiet, went careful, and started treating every interaction like it might detonate something. Most people read that kind of sudden calm as evidence of genuine growth. They relax, let their guard down, and tell themselves that the worst is finally behind them. Do not relax. That calm is not peace. That calm is calculation. The eggshells are not evidence of a changed character. They are evidence of raised stakes. Something shifted in the external world, not internally, that made careful movement necessary. A consequence drew closer. A process was initiated somewhere. Someone with access to information began connecting pieces that had been kept deliberately apart. And the response to that approaching consequence was not accountability. It was strategy. Cold, deliberate, fear-driven strategy, and that strategy has you positioned at the center of it. You were not chosen randomly. You were chosen because of what you represent. Your stability, your credibility, and your track record of being someone other people trust. Those are the resources being targeted right now. The plan is to get close enough, warm enough, and present enough in your life that when the exposure arrives, a counter-narrative exists. Something that says, look who accepts me, look who I stand beside. That positioning requires you to remain uninformed just long enough for it to take hold. The full picture is already on its way to you. And that is exactly what has this person walking on glass. The engine is running. It has always been running. But the vehicle has not been going anywhere because running from consequences instead of facing them produces distance without producing ground. New environments, new social circles, new identities, but the same wound, driving the same pattern, packed into every fresh beginning like a stowaway that never gets caught at the border. The chaos looks different each time, but it produces the same result. The debts change creditors but never disappear. The mask changes audiences but never changes its function. What presents as ambition is actually desperation wearing ambition's clothes. What presents as a fresh start is the same unresolved cycle entering a new container. The people who get close enough always end up in the same position, eventually confused, diminished in some way, and wondering what the early warning signs were that they talked themselves out of. The wheel was spinning the whole time. You sensed it. You may not have had precise language for it yet, but you felt the absence of genuine traction beneath all that motion. Something in you registered the pattern even when your mind was still trying to give it the benefit of the doubt. Now here is the part that connects directly to you. You have something that cannot be manufactured, borrowed, or performed into existence. You have genuine forward movement. Your life has been building on something real. Your credibility has been earned through consistent, unglamorous, often invisible effort, not constructed through presentation or positioning. That is precisely what makes you valuable to someone whose own foundation is actively cracking. Borrowed credibility from a genuine source is the most convincing counterfeit available, and your proximity is the asset being pursued. Your actual company is not the point, and here is what that means in practical terms. Every venture being pitched to you, every reconciliation being offered, every partnership being framed as mutual benefit, all of it carries one non-negotiable structural requirement underneath the language. Your name must be attached. Your association must be visible. Your presence must be real enough that when the collapse comes, and it is coming, there is a layer of your credibility standing between the choices that were made and the full weight of the consequences those choices are about to produce. You are being positioned to absorb impact that belongs entirely to someone else. Seeing that clearly, not with bitterness, not with drama, but with the clean eyes of someone who has done enough internal work to call a thing exactly what it is, changes everything about how you move from here. If you recognized yourself in this message, hype this video to guide other chosen ones to this truth. Someone connected to this situation presents as elevated, wise, trustworthy. This person appears to operate from a place of genuine moral authority. They move carefully, speak in calibrated language, and arrive in your world with a presentation so precisely aimed at your specific sensibility that for a moment it almost lands, because something in you does not buy it. That quiet internal antenna, the one tuned by everything you have survived, picks up the signal beneath the surface. It registers the performance running underneath the warmth and the calculation living behind the care. And it sends up a flag that says clearly, this is not what it is presenting itself as. Trust that signal without apology. Here is the specific danger of this mask. It is not static, it adapts. It has been observing your growth, tracking your evolution, and recalibrating its presentation to match the version of you that exists right now, not the version that was easier to mislead when you were still inside the chaos. The version approaching you today speaks the language of healing and uses the vocabulary of growth. It positions itself as exactly the kind of presence that someone at your current stage of clarity would naturally and reasonably welcome. That level of precision is the tell. Genuine transformation does not need to perform itself at your public moment of recognition. Genuine transformation does its work quietly, at great personal cost, and then lives with the full consequences of that work without requiring your witness or your approval. What is approaching you right now requires your witness specifically. It requires the visible optics of your closeness. And that instrumental requirement, the need to be seen alongside you rather than any authentic desire to reconnect with you, exposes the real architecture of what is actually happening. Behind the mask is a system of structural lies. These are not ordinary untruths, but foundational deceptions, the kind maintained so consistently that the person wearing the mask may have partially convinced themselves of their own version of events. Narratives have been constructed to cover financial misconduct. Explanations have been engineered to make betrayals sound reasonable. The entire performance exists to serve one purpose, ensuring that you do not receive the full picture before the positioning is complete. The full picture is assembling itself right now, and it is doing so without anyone's permission. I must interrupt this transmission for just a moment. Are you really chosen? Prove it. It's easy to watch videos about chosen ones. It's another thing to put yourself to the test. If you're still here, that means something, but talk is cheap. Real chosen ones take action, and real chosen ones are also paying attention. You've noticed it. Chosen one channels getting silenced, videos pulled, voices removed from the platform. The mainstream media is cracking down on us. But we will not give up our voice, and neither should you. That's why joining Destiny Engine is a 360 win. You support your favorite channels and fuel your own rise at the same time. It generates personalized sequences that help you rewire betrayal into transcendence, turn isolation into sacred power, and transform their downfall into your rise. We are using the Dark Elite's own weapons against them, taking their declassified consciousness technology that programmed competition and scarcity and repurposing it to serve divine justice. The beauty is you don't even have to lift a finger. You put on the headphones, press play, and watch your enemies choke on the rope their own lies created. If you're done consuming and ready to prove you're chosen, start your Destiny Engine trial today, risk-free. Join the Obsidian Inner Order live checks and watch divine justice accelerate in your life. Link in the description. Here is what you are not supposed to know. Stated directly, there is fraud. Real, documented, consequence-generating fraud. Resources have been moved without authorization. Names have been used without consent, and your name may be among them. Obligations were created and then abandoned. People are owed something and have been waiting longer than they are willing to continue waiting. This is not a moment of poor judgment that spiraled out of control. This is a sustained, deliberate pattern of taking what does not belong and constructing enough noise and distraction around it to avoid the full accounting. Your name may have been used as a credibility anchor, not because you participated, you did not. It is because your association carries weight that this person's own reputation can no longer carry. Your standing was invoked to make something look legitimate that was not legitimate. A position you hold, a relationship you have built, a reputation you earned through years of honest conduct. Any of it may have been referenced in contexts you were never informed of and would never have approved. This is the specific information already in motion toward you. This is the reason for the eggshells, the managed approach, and the carefully calibrated warmth you have been receiving. If you receive the full picture before it can be shaped for you, before this person can position themselves as the one who came to you honestly and disclosed first, the entire strategy collapses, and the collapse does not stop with one person. The people who knew and stayed quiet are exposed alongside them. The ones who helped contain the information because they had their own reasons for doing so face their own version of the reckoning. You becoming fully informed does not just dismantle one constructed narrative. It dismantles an entire arrangement, a set of coordinated silences built on the shared assumption that you would either not find out or would not be believed even if you did. Both of those assumptions are failing simultaneously right now. You are finding out. And you have never been more credible than you are at this moment, because your life is the evidence. Everything you have built, the recognition approaching you, the character visible in how you have consistently conducted yourself, all of it is real, and none of it can be dismissed by people whose own credibility is actively disintegrating. The exposure is not approaching from a distance. It is already present. The information has already reached the people who needed to receive it. The connections are already being drawn between things that were deliberately kept separate. What remains is the public moment, the point at which what is already true in the background becomes undeniable in plain sight. That moment is close. You need to understand who you are dealing with at the deepest level, not to generate sympathy. None is required here. You need to see the full pattern clearly enough that you are never caught inside it again. This person runs. Running is the primary survival mechanism. When a situation becomes untenable, when debts are called, when truth begins to surface, when consequences arrive at the door, the response is always movement, new environment, new cast of people, new identity presented to those who have not yet seen the previous version. The reinvention is practiced and almost elegant. The confidence with which an unsustainable situation is walked away from and a new one is entered would be remarkable if it were not so consistently devastating to everyone left managing the aftermath. There is a long history of this destructive pattern. When the mask slips, the explosion follows. When control is challenged, wreckage follows. People who extended genuine goodwill received chaos in return. This pattern was running long before you became part of the picture, and it has been running ever since. And now the running has nowhere left to go. Because this time, the legal dimension is real and active. There are people in positions of authority with this person's name in an open file, not as a footnote, but as the subject of an active investigation. There may already have been a preliminary confrontation with that process, a formal interaction, a warning, something kept quiet while the performance of normal life continues on the surface. What is happening now is the interval before the full weight of institutional consequence arrives and cannot be delayed any further. The last move, the one being executed right now and aimed directly at you, is to manufacture visible proximity to you before that weight lands. The goal is to be present at your public moment of recognition, to stand near your earned elevation, and to carry that image away as a counter-narrative to what is coming. The internal pitch is, look who I associate with, look at the level I operate at, look at who is willing to stand beside me. You are not willing, and you will not be used as evidence that you are. Refusing that use is not cruelty, it is not a failure to extend grace. It is the correct, grounded application of everything you have learned about this pattern, about your own value, and about what you have worked hard enough to deserve to protect. A clear, calm, non-negotiable refusal to be leveraged is one of the most powerful things you can do right now. Not because it punishes anyone, but because it protects what is genuinely yours. You are at your moment. The recognition is real. The public acknowledgement of who you are and what you have built is moving toward you with the full force of everything you have earned, the work, the healing, the change, the quiet forward motion of someone who refused to be permanently defined by what tried to define them. The people present are there to witness something genuine, your achievement, your character, and the real result of work done when no one was applauding. And then, uninvited, or barely invited, or present under a pretense that does not hold up to examination, this person arrives. They arrive late, trying to slip in without drawing attention while simultaneously maneuvering to be noticed by exactly the right people. That contradiction, wanting invisibility and visibility at the same time, produces a very specific energy. It is clumsy and overextended. It is the energy of someone trying to manage too many variables at once and losing grip on all of them simultaneously. The careful, controlled approach breaks the moment it makes contact with a setting it was not built for. Something in the atmosphere shifts, attention moves, and in that movement of attention, a contrast becomes visible to everyone present. The authentic, earned recognition of someone who built their standing on truth, set against the uninvited presence of someone whose standing is being actively dismantled by the same truth they spent so long suppressing. The contrast is not subtle. The people present can feel the difference, and that feeling moves through the gathering immediately. At the same moment, because this is how convergence works, this is how the universe completes what it starts. The information surfaces, not dramatically, it surfaces in the quiet, efficient, unstoppable way that truth surfaces when it is fully ready. The right conversation happens between the right people. The documentation reaches the destination it was always heading toward. The connections form between pieces that were deliberately kept apart for so long. The mask comes all the way off, in a context where there is no recovery script, no available spin, and no constructed version of events left that can repair the gap between what has been performed and what is now plainly visible to everyone. And you are standing in your light, clean. Your name is attached to the recognition you earned, not to what is unraveling nearby, because you saw clearly, because you created distance when clarity required it. Because you refused, without drama and without any public announcement, to be used as cover. This is not justice as an abstract concept. This is justice as a witnessed, completed event. What follows is not yours to manage. It is the structural, procedural process of consequence finally catching up to the choices that generated it. The legal process moves with patience, but it moves completely. An active file does not close because someone appeared at a public event and attempted to look credible alongside you. A process already in motion does not pause because a new narrative was constructed or a new association was attempted. It finishes. It arrives at the destination determined by documented evidence, not by performance, not by last-minute positioning, and not by any of the moves being made right now to soften the landing. Incarceration is a real and active possibility here, not as a metaphor, as a literal outcome of a literal legal process already underway. The people with access to the full picture already understand this. Among those who know what is actually in that file, the outcome is not genuinely in question. What remains is the process completing itself on its own timeline. You are not part of that process as a subject. You are not among the people who need to reckon with having provided cover or stayed attached too long to someone heading straight toward this wall. Your discernment held. The version of you that was easier to use, the overwhelmed, still attached, partially informed version, no longer exists, and the work it took to become the version of you standing here right now is exactly what this strategy failed to account for. The terror being carried right now is not only about legal exposure, though that fear is real and it is large. Beneath it is something older and more personal. The deeper fear is that you will see the full picture completely, without the softening influence of shared history or the distortion of misplaced loyalty, and that what you see will confirm something that has always been privately known but never faced. That the elevated, capable, confident version being performed for the world was always a construction. It was always a shield for something smaller, more frightened, and more ordinary underneath. That every carefully crafted presentation was compensating for an absence of the real thing. Your clarity is the mirror this person cannot afford to stand in front of, and the power available to you in this moment does not require you to do a single thing with it. You do not have to confront anyone, announce anything, or deliver any kind of revelation. You simply have to be yourself, fully, publicly, and without apology. Your presence in your own truth is the most complete exposure of what is false that could possibly exist. The contrast does the work on its own. Your wholeness dismantles the performance simply by existing alongside it. You are not the weapon in this situation. You are the truth itself, and truth exposes what is counterfeit by its very nature, without effort, without aggression, and without a single word aimed at any target. The blessing arriving in your life did not happen in spite of what you went through. It grew directly from how you chose to move through it, not because pain produces reward by default, but because of what you specifically decided to do with yours. There were real, private, completely unwitnessed moments where becoming what was done to you would have been the easier path. The betrayal could have made you a betrayer. The manipulation could have made you someone who also manipulates, because it works, because the alternative requires a level of internal discipline that earns no applause and generates no visible reward in the short term. You chose the harder path anyway. You did the internal work that changes a pattern at the root, rather than simply relocating it to a new address. You released the attachment, not cleanly, not all at once, and not without real grief, but genuinely enough that the energy held inside that attachment eventually became available for something worth building. That is the mechanism most people spend a long time not understanding. The blessing was not being withheld from you. It was arriving and finding no clear landing because your full bandwidth was occupied by managing a connection that had no intention of honoring what you invested in it. The letting go did not just remove something painful, it opened the channel, and into that opening the thing that was always meant for you moved, because that is what happens when you genuinely create the opening. The recognition approaching you now, the forward momentum you are living inside, the quality of what is assembling around you, all of it is the direct yield of the work you did when nobody was watching, when there was no external confirmation that it would ever matter, when it felt invisible and thankless and without end. That work is the foundation beneath everything visible right now. Real things last. Real things compound, real things accumulate into a life that the people who tried to shortcut their way through yours will eventually study from a distance and genuinely not be able to explain. They will not be able to explain it because the answer lives entirely in the internal work, and that is the one thing that cannot be borrowed, performed, or strategically positioned into existence. While you were building, your progress was being monitored. Every visible step forward you took was processed as a data point, threatening a narrative that needed to stay intact. Every public acknowledgement you received was treated as evidence against a version of events being carefully maintained. Every door that opened for you was registered not as something to celebrate, but as a verdict absorbed as confirmation that the efforts made to undermine you did not produce the intended outcome. The accumulation of that evidence, your consistent, undeniable upward movement, produced a specific kind of internal deterioration. Not the kind that shows on the surface immediately, but the kind that runs deep and eventually shows in every pattern. The creative energy that could have gone toward building something genuine got rerouted into tracking your progress instead. The vitality that could have produced real change got consumed by monitoring the life you were quietly assembling. What remained was a hollowed-out version of momentum, the appearance of activity without the substance of anything that actually lasts. You were not watching back with the same intensity. You were too genuinely occupied. You were too invested in your own forward motion to spend significant energy cataloging what someone else was or was not doing. And that asymmetry, your building set against their watching, widened steadily into the gap that now exists between where you are and where this situation stands. That gap is fully visible to everyone, including the person who created it, and the visibility of it is part of what is fueling the urgency of the current approach toward you. Watching your own life narrow while someone else's expands eventually produces a desperate move toward the person whose growth represents everything that was forfeited. That move is live right now, and you are completely prepared for it. This is where everything lands. You are done explaining yourself, not temporarily, permanently. To anyone who requires a justification before they can recognize your value, let them remain without it. You are not the defendant in any proceeding constructed in someone else's mind or social circle. The era of presenting evidence for your own worth to people who had already decided the verdict, that era is finished. This is not arrogance. You remain accountable to your own standards, which are high and which you hold consistently. But accountability belongs between you and your integrity. It does not belong to a performance staged for an audience that is using your justification as material to repackage and use against you. One of those is genuine growth, the other is a trap. You have been free of that trap long enough to feel the difference in your body before your mind even finishes forming the thought. The silent departure is not passivity. It is the most active and deliberate move in the entire sequence. It is the unglamorous, powerful choice to place your full presence, your full attention, and your full creative force behind what is being built, not behind the defense of what is already proving itself through the evidence of your life, not behind the management of someone else's collapse, and not behind ongoing negotiation with people who have already shown they are operating in bad faith. Forward is the only direction from here. The moment you stop requiring external agreement with what you already know to be true about yourself, you become something that no outside narrative can threaten. You stopped needing to be undeniable to them a long time ago. What you have become is undeniable to every opportunity, every aligned relationship, and every open door that is actively searching for someone with your specific combination of genuine history and genuine character, someone who has been tested under real conditions and did not become small in response. You did not become small. You are not on the glass floor. You were never on the glass floor. That floor was built entirely from their choices, the deceptions, the sustained habit of leveraging without earning, taking without honoring, and using without reciprocating. You stood near it for a period of your life. You stood close enough to feel the instability of it, and close enough that when it finally gives way, you will recognize the sound. But you will not be standing on it when it does. You will be standing on what you built, something solid, something assembled slowly, honestly, and under genuine pressure from materials that do not crack, integrity, real healing, and the specific kind of character that can only be forged by choosing, over and over and over again, not to become what was done to you. Chosen ones do not wait for justice to arrive and place something in their hands. They build lives so completely grounded in truth that every lie constructed around them cannot survive the contact. The evidence is your life. The evidence is the recognition approaching you. The evidence is the quality of your character, the depth of your foundation, and the plain fact that you are here, clear-eyed, settled, and standing in your own power, having come through exactly what was designed to keep you down. They are scared you will figure this out. They are scared because once you have the full picture, once the mask is on the floor, the fraud is documented, and the process has completed itself, you will understand not just what happened, you will understand why it had to unfold exactly this way. You will understand why the path required what it required, why every moment of confusion and difficulty and darkness was the specific route to exactly this position, to you, standing here, clear and grounded and ready. You were never going to lose, not because the outcome was handed to you, but because you became the kind of person this outcome belongs to. You made the choices, you did the work. Through the unglamorous, unwitnessed, sustained effort of genuine internal transformation, you became precisely the person this moment requires. And this moment, your recognition, your elevation, your full arrival into the life you have built, is not fortune, it is consequence. It is the natural, mathematical consequence of everything you chose to invest in and everything you chose to release. Consequences do not reverse, they compound, and yours are only beginning. So walk forward into what is waiting for you. Walk in clean, walk in settled. Walk in with the complete knowledge of who you are, what you carry, and why this belongs to you. Every piece of yourself that was targeted, your confidence, your credibility, your name, your unshakable sense of your own worth, it is all still here. It was never actually removed. You simply went through a season where their noise competed with it. That season is over. You know what you know, you see what you see, you are what you are. And what you are, shaped by what shaped you, tested by what tested you, and refined by the exact fire that was meant to extinguish you, is the most clarifying presence you can bring into any situation. You are not a threat to anything genuine. You are not a danger to anything real. You are a complete and total exposure of the fraudulent, the performed, and every carefully maintained construction that can only survive as long as no one nearby is operating from actual truth. You are operating from actual truth. That is exactly why they are going to prison. What goes around has come around. Now walk forward and be undeniable.